Hello and welcome back to On the Workbench. Today we're under the hood of my 5.3 liter Saab 97X 2008, and we're going to be replacing the AC and the serpentine belts on this vehicle. This is going to be specific for your engine. I think this should be similar, I believe, for the Chevy Trailblazer SS and others that have the V8 engine. There's going to be some variances with other models that have a different engine type in terms of where your belts are located. The reason for this today is because we need to get to the compressor belt for the AC compressor to replace that. But in my opinion, I don't like to replace the compressor belt without replacing the serpentine belt, because I got to remove the serpentine belt to get to the AC compressor belt, and so that's going to be the reason for doing this. So a couple little tips here. Number one, you got to remove the engine cover here to get under there. Number two, be careful and be wary of the fan on the front. Make sure it's not going to kick on. You may want to remove or disconnect your battery to make sure that your fan doesn't kick on. And finally, also, just as a quick reference, at least on my model here, if we look over to the side, printed right here, shows a little diagram here. You got one belt for the serpentine belt that shows where it goes, and a second belt here for the AC belt. There are two different belts, and you're also going to need a set of serpentine belt tools. We'll go through the tools here in just a moment, and we'll take a look at the parts. All right, so here's the two belts we're looking at here. So the one on the left here is our AC belt, and the one on the right is our serpentine belt. So in my opinion, and obviously feel free to disagree with me in the comments below, if you have to remove the serpentine belt, I'd rather put on a brand new one than put back the one that was there, because the one that's there, at least in my current case, is about 3.5 years old. You cut the extra 20, 25 bucks for the belt, I think is worth it to have a brand new belt on there. Just gives me peace of mind. I don't like taking off old belts and put it back on if I can help it. And then we had the cracked AC belt, so we got a new one there. This was ordered off of Amazon, so Continental or ContiTech. I don't know, I feel like I've had good success with Continental tire and rubber belts in the past. These are brought to you by CRP Automotive. Not a sponsor, by the way, not a sponsor here. I've just had good luck with Continental belts in the past. So I ordered those, and that's what we got. You can go to the CRP website, and you can go through the whole sizing guide to get the right belt numbers. In my case here, I found them when I ordered these off of Amazon at the AC belt. Amazon had marked it incompatible with my vehicle, but that's why I cross-referenced with the manufacturer here to make sure I got the right belt size. And so now let's take a look at the tools that we're going to need, and then we will get under the hood of the car. So a quick look at the tools that we're going to use. There's going to be two basic tools. One is going to be our serpentine belt kit. This is my gear wrench ratcheting one. I've got a video about this one. Put a little card up here in the corner. And then I also have this OTC serpentine belt hook that's got a business end here that can help me get the belts on or off, just because my hands don't always fit down the engine bay quite as well. Now, if my hands and arms were the size of maybe a 10-year-old, I think that might be a different story. But I like my hands and fingers, and this makes sure I keep everything safe and out of the way, and I can get everything properly seated while holding the tensioner, so that I got the grip at the other end of that. So those are the basic tool sets here. The specific parts that you're going to need out of the kit to do this job, number one is going to be your 3/8 square adapter. You're going to use that for the AC belt, and then you're going to need the 15mm for the tensioner on the serpentine belt. But then on the AC belt, you also may want a short 3/8 extension, just because the other obstructions, stacking that together, will make your life easier. And you also may want a flathead screwdriver to be able to remove the Vortec air assembly over top, just to give yourself some extra space and elbow room while working on. The first step in this process is going to be to remove the little thumb screw here to remove the engine cover. So we got enough space right here to be able to work. A couple turns and that lifts right off. And then now you can see right in here is our serpentine belt. And so now we're going to need to get our serpentine belt tool set up to be able to release or to move the tensioner, which is going to be on the far left side over here, to be able to remove this belt. And also note at the bottom that there are two belt connections, that the serpentine belt actually connects on the front side, or at least towards the front bumper, and the AC belt goes to the rear on the lower pulley at the very bottom. I've got my Serpentine belt tool here all set up, as you can see here on the front here. Now I've got the 15mm socket on the business end of the tool, and I've got this set to be able to, so that it'll lock down so I can turn this clockwise to release tension on the belt to remove it. All right, there we go. You can see that it's going to remove that. And so the belt is now successfully off of the tensioner pulley. I'm going to move that back and take my tool off. You'll notice how this belt goes completely to the left of the fan drive. So when you put this back on, it goes to the passenger side of it completely and around, so this all comes out. Just like that. We'll set that aside. And now we're going to have to go into the AC belt, which is located right here on this side of the pulley coming off the engine. So now we're going to reset our Serpentine belt tool to get to the tensioner on that. That might be a little bit harder to see, as that's all the way at the bottom, and that's why you're going to be using the extra tool to be trying to make sure we get all of our belt off correctly. And now, just to give my fingers a little bit of extra space, I'm going to remove our air intake assembly here, just by loosening the clips. And there is also another connection on the far side here that has to get removed. It's a rigid tube that goes down below. And then just like that, we've got this removed and out of the way. So our Vortec air assembly is out. And see, we've got the mass airflow sensor over here exposed and our throttle body exposed. You can look at those if you need to inspect those. And now this will give us better access back here for getting down to the AC belt. To do that, we're going to put the 3/8 square drive end on the Serpentine belt tool, and we're going to fish this down. Going to have to move the light. Okay, so to get at this, I got my 3/8 square drive, fitting them, adding a little extension onto it to be able to just get a little bit of extra reach and clearance to get to the tensioner. At this point here, it takes a little bit of trial and error of working the ratchet back and forth to be able to get the tensioner moved out of the way, and then trying to slip the air conditioner belt off. I found it the easiest to be able to try to push the air conditioner belt towards the back of the vehicle, rather than trying to pull it off to the front by getting it to the back and pushing the pulley backward, the belt backwards, over the pulleys gave me enough room that I could detension the tensioner and then slip it off from there without much trouble. But it was a multi-step process. There's not a lot of space here for me to fish a camera in here. I know I wish I could have showed this just a little bit better. It's pretty self-explanatory once you get your hands in there and you start playing with it. But it took just a little bit of steps of back and forth of trying to just slowly get the belt off. It is a little bit of a tight, precarious fit to be able to get down there without actually removing your fan and your fan assembly, which you can also do because the fan clutch on this does come off pretty easily with, I believe it was a 36mm wrench and then the special GM holding tool. Some of those you can rent from the auto parts store if you would prefer to go that route to do this. But a little bit of wiggling back and forth using both hands to be able to get it off. Bending over, you can definitely get it. You'll be able to see this maybe a little bit better as the belt goes back on. I think I did a better job filming that. And so now let's take a look at the belt that is coming off and the replacement belt. Just to make sure we got the right belt and double check, This is why we never cut the old belt when we go to take it off. We're going to pull out the new belt. This is for the AC system. And we're going to double check that all of our parts references were correct. And that indeed, that looks like that's about right. Obviously there's a little bit of, on the new belt, there's a little bit of memory in it. And if you look at the belt width, it lines up just the same. And if you look at the inside here, we've got our ribs. We got the same number of ribs on both belts here. Maybe you can see the cracks in the old one here. The new one should be nice and clean and good. And so now we're at the reach back in the engine bay and put this one on. Just like that. And then we'll have a brand new AC belt. So I'm sorry I missed on camera getting the old belt off. The old belt, eventually I was able to just rotate it around and get it off of the engine pulley. No big deal. And so then the new belt, this is what I've got here. I'm going to get it around the fan assembly here on the passenger side of it. And then in this case here, I'm going to put it around the compressor, which is on the left side here first. And then when you get the belt close, is when we're going to have to get out the Serpentine belt tool again to move the tensioner out of the way. And now when you think you're done, double check that the belt looks like it's sitting square on top of the compressor pulley, the engine pulley, and the tensioner, and that the belt is going straight and that the ribs are properly set and the belt is in the proper alignment before you move on to putting the Serpentine belt back on. And now we're going to repeat the test process with our new Serpentine belt. So the belt I took off is probably good enough to go back on, but I just thought it was good practice to put on a brand new belt if I'm having to replace it and release the tension. To me, it's just cheap insurance because these belts are not that expensive in the grand scheme of things, but if one goes out on you, that can be a problem. There's not that much wear in the belt coming off, but we'll put a new one on anyway. But we're going to double check here. Height feels the same. Our rib count should be close to the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On the new one, the old one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ribs. So we have the same number of ribs, and let's check our length. The new one here is in the middle. It's not going to be quite perfect here because the new one obviously is not. It should be a little bit shorter because it's not stretched. See if we can set it on top. And that at least feels like we're pretty darn close to being the right size. So now we're going to put the new belt into the car. This one goes much quicker than what the AC belt does. We have to use our tensioner. Remember that this whole belt's going to slide back down the passenger side of the fan axle, the fan drive. All right, with the belt here, I'm going to just slide this whole thing on the passenger side of the fan pulley, because we know up top here we've got a couple of pulleys here. Obviously we've got our tensioner over here on the left, so we're going to deal with the pulleys at the bottom first, and then we're going to deal with the pulleys up top after that. So I'm just going to put this around these pulleys loosely like that so I can work on what goes down below. We also have the diagram where that pulley is going to go back up onto the fan, going across the top, as evidenced by the diagram. So you got to pay attention to a little bit of just the way the belt snakes around the engine compartment. Our trusty OTC tool here will give us some help. And that comes around the tensioner, goes around the fan pulley, around the alternator, and then goes down over here. Before I can go any further, I'm going to need my Serpentine belt tool. All right, so then with the tensioning tool, I can just drop that down. And then if things go well, I can try to get it around the pulley here, around the pulley there, and it popped out from the engine at the bottom. But it's just a matter here of actually just getting all the pads just right. Of the two belts on this car, this is by far the easier of the two. The AC belt is much lower and harder to pull off than what this one is. Making sure we get it around the alternator and we get it around all the pulleys, just like the diagram shows.
One extra tip here to share: whenever you're getting that belt on, make sure you put it underneath the tensioner first before you put the Serpentine belt tool on. There's not going to be enough slack in the belt to actually slip the belt underneath the belt tensioning pulley when you've got the Serpentine belt tool on. So just think through that order of operations. Not a big deal. Just a little extra tip here while I'm getting this belt adjusted here on.
And then double check that it's on all the pulleys correctly. I can see there's one here, that one of the ribs here is not on exactly the way that I want it to be properly seated. So we're going to fix that up right here right quick. Double check your work, make sure the belt is on all the pulleys. You know, a couple of the weird things on this vehicle here is there are two pulleys that don't actually have a guideway on them. Let's see if we can get the light working right. The one is this pulley here that's just below your throttle body and to the left of the passenger side of your alternator. You can see there's definitely a wear path here, and then where your fan belt wraps around, there's also no guide on that, but you can see where the wear pattern is to get that properly seated. Double check on the other pulleys here. You can see like on the alternator pulley here that the belt here should be between the guideways. You can see there's this guideway right there. And all the other pulleys, make sure it's properly seated all the way around down by the engine. And then once you feel confident that's all seated, release the tension, and then you're back in business. And so now we're just going to put the Vortec air assembly in the back on the reverse order that we took it off. Put the engine cover back on. Give her a quick startup and test, and then we're good to go. So now you've got both belts changed in probably about a half hour's time, give or take. And that's it. Hope you found this video useful and interesting. Have a great day. Bye.